Full disclosure, I have no idea how to pronounce any of the games that we're about to talk about. I've scoured the internet and heard every opinion from EO to IO, and I'm fairly confident that it's pronounced .io, but in the event that I'm wrong, which is probable, this is my get out of jail free card. I'm calling myself out before you get a chance to.
Escape from reality.
The first time I had heard of these games was when I was in a group call with some friends, looking for something to do. No one had the time to download anything, no one had the money to buy something, we just wanted something quick that we could do it that second. One recommended a game called Agar.io, where all you did was play as a circle, trying to eat other circles to become the biggest circle. What sounded like the most simple and boring game concept ever quickly became one of the most fun experiences I had with that group of friends. Ever since then, when I'm bored out of my mind or just watching a video, maybe I'm waiting for something to load, I'll just hop onto a game and mindlessly play around. It wasn't until quite a while later that I discovered this whole genre of games that were quick to pick up and play. They were easy to learn, you could play with hundreds of people at one time, and hopping on to play for a few minutes could easily turn into a few hours. While I wouldn't say that these games are at the height of their relevance anymore, there was still a very active and dedicated player base for these games, and I want to talk about what made them so great, and maybe why they didn't last as long as they could have. Now, obviously .io games aren't made by one single developer, and in itself it's not actually a genre of games, but it's just a way to play them. There are tons of .io games that are single-player experiences, and that's that. But there's still a specific section of these games that at one point were extremely popular. They were easy to join, online multiplayer games, many of them taking the form of a battle royale, but of course their possibilities were pretty much endless. With most of these games ending in the domain .io, I was curious to see what it actually stood for, only to be met with even more confusion upon finding out that it actually stands for the British Indian Ocean Territory. Apparently the domain is being used a lot for technology companies nowadays, but truthfully, I know literally nothing about this kind of thing. But just in case you were wondering what it stood for, there's your answer. As I mentioned before, Agar.io, or Agario, was the first game I ever played. Agar being some sort of gelatin substance from what I can tell, although in this game you're just a circle, eating smaller circles to get bigger. There are also close to 100 other player circles running around doing the same thing. If a circle is bigger than you and runs over you, you'll be eaten, and your game will be over. However, rejoining the same game is as easy as hitting the play button again. It's also important to mention that the bigger you are, the slower you move around. You might not think this is an issue or an important factor into gameplay, but we'll get into why this is really important in just a minute. On the top right of the screen sits a leaderboard, normally filled with vulgar and offensive names, showing you your ranking and the top 10 players active in the game. However, there is no winner. There's no timer or objective number to hit. The game ends when you want it to end. Beyond just moving your circle around with your cursor, there are two things you can do. Press W, which will eject some of the mass you've collected, so if you need to move faster to escape someone, you can do so. The biggest and most important mechanic in this game is the ability to split. Take your circle, cut it in half, and suddenly you have two circles of equal mass. You can do this multiple times up to a certain point, and after some time has passed, all your circles will eventually form into one again. This lone mechanic is where 99% of the strategy comes in. It's also necessary for larger circles to use the mechanic if they want to move at any sort of decent pace. Splitting your circle into two allows you to go faster. but obviously makes you more susceptible to other larger circles. It can help you collect the tiny circles to grow faster by covering up more ground, but if a larger circle comes by and splits into your direction, you'll be swallowed up effortlessly. Suddenly, what seems like a boring game about making your circle bigger becomes a strategic meeting of the mind. Do you risk splitting up to collect more dots? Do you stay strong and slow and hope that a giant circle doesn't run into you? Should you take a chance and go after that group of weak circles and hope they don't form back together and overtake you at the last second? When I first played the game, there was only the initial free-for-all mode, and it was hard to play with friends because you basically had to keep resetting until you all had the same leaderboard. Now there's a party system to make sure you and your friends all play together, although I don't have any friends, so I can't test that out. Other game mode types are teams, where you're randomly assigned red, blue, or green. Once again, there's no real way to win this mode, it just continues until you stop. There's an experimental mode, which has these spawner circles that shoot out tiny bits, but I'm not really sure beyond that. I'm sure there's something more that I just can't see, but feel free to let me know if there are any more differences than that in the comments down below. Lastly, there's the Battle Royale mode. You might sarcastically think, well, of course it has one, but it actually makes complete sense. And I love the idea of a Battle Royale mode in this game because it starts everyone off at an even playing field. Any other game mode involves you joining an already in-progress game where there are bound to be massive titans who have established themselves already. This is also the only game type that actually has a definitive winner, with the biggest downside being that it can take a while to fill up a lobby, and more likely than not, you're playing a game like this because you don't have much time. Overall, the game is so simple to play, but once you learn the inner strategies and watch YouTube videos of really good players, there's a ton to learn and you can get hooked for a long time. The second game I was exposed to in the .io games phenomenon was Diep.io, Diep.io. Now, see with this one, I don't know. Agar is a thing. I don't think Diep is a thing. I wasn't quite sure what I was expecting from the game, but it exceeded all expectations and showed me what exactly these games were capable of. In free-for-all mode, you start off as a circle with a single gun, surrounded by squares, triangles, and pentagons. Destroying them gives you experience. The more side, the more experience you gain, but the more health the object has. Once you have enough points, you can put them into certain level ups: health regeneration, max health, body damage, bullet speed, bullet penetration, bullet damage, reload speed, and movement speed. You will reach a cap and you won't be able to max them all out, so there are builds, so to speak. At certain milestone levels, you'll be able to choose one of 4 upgrade tiers to go into, and each of those trees has multiple branching pathways. You can even not upgrade your gun until you reach a higher tier, which gives you even more options. Overall, there are well over 50 different builds, and some tiers overlap, so you can get certain combinations in different ways. While I'm sure there are some setups that are objectively awful, and some that are objectively better, it's nice seeing a variety as you explore around and play. It's very easy for games like this to be trapped in a meta where there's only one right effective setup, so to see players using all the different options given to you means that they did a good enough job at balancing everything out. And the game is still being updated to this day. In terms of mode types, we see a much larger selection here. Free-for-all for your standard game type, survival, which is like a battle royale type mode, although I've never really managed to get a full lobby going. 2 teams, in which there is a blue and red side and it's a constant battle. 4 teams, where each team controls a corner. Domination, which is a 2-team battle where the objective is to take over all 4 yellow turrets in the center of the map. Tag, which supposedly, once you are killed by a color, you join that color's team. Although it's never worked for me, and anytime I die, I always come back as the same color. Generally, there's only like 5 people playing this game type anyhow, so it makes it pretty hard for the mechanic to be effective. Maze, which is free for all except with walls and boxes and corners to hide behind. And lastly, Sandbox, which is just a mode to get some experience and try out builds. You'd think Sandbox would be great for testing and seeing what works for you, but you'd be wrong. You have to slowly manually grind all the way to the max level if you want to upgrade. This can literally take up to 15 minutes, when the option to just make a build and try it out should be right there. You'd honestly be able to test builds out much faster in a random free-for-all game and then here. Also, there's no accounts, so there's no records, so if you lose, it doesn't really matter anyways. Just go to the free-for-all game, try out your builds there. A big problem that I've already mentioned multiple times is that you can't really win in these games. Now, Agar.io you can't win either except for Battle Royale mode. Here you can win in Survival, which takes a significant amount of time just to get into a game, Tag, which sometimes doesn't really work for me, and Domination, which is probably the game type I prefer the most. You actually have teammates and a common goal to work towards. That being said, I've never stuck around long enough to actually see a game end, and it's an incredibly long and tedious process. Free-for-all, maze, teams, it's all still fun, and much like Agar.io, you just play as long as you want to and then you're done. It feels different from Agar.io, however, because instead of just becoming the larger circle, you could potentially encounter someone the same or similar level as you, in which case it all comes down to skill, and that way I prefer it much more. Considering how basic the premise is, there's still a surprising number of people actively playing, and there are links so you can play with your friends if you have a group of people and you want to do something together. Slither.io. Slitherio. This game is just a multiplayer version of the classic game Snake. This one is the least interesting to me, but when I bring up these games, this one also gets brought up the most. You run around collecting glowing circles to make your tail longer. Unlike classic Snake, touching your own tail doesn't kill you, just touching other people's. The only mechanic besides aiming where you're going is clicking down to boost at the cost of some of your tail length. This can also be used to suddenly cut people off, allowing you to kill them and take their circles. There's also a ton of aesthetic options so you can customize your snake however you wish. It's fun, but you're pretty limited into what you can do. You get big, you die. You get big again, you die again. There's really not a lot of variation to this one. I would still classify this along with Agar.io and Diep.io as the big three of this quote-unquote genre. The most mainstream and popular, and really the only three I knew before I decided to make this video. But then I went on a journey, and I learned just how many there are out there. Superspin.io. While 2020 has been a tough year for many, I take some odd sense of comfort knowing that there's a browser game about fidget spinners that has people still playing it. You collect bits, you click down to go faster, the more bits you have, the faster you spin. Now if you're over 20, I know what you're probably thinking, and no, it's nothing like Beyblades. There's a bit of colliding with other spinners, but the clashes don't last very long and it's pretty easy to run away. Hexar.io. I actually quite enjoy this one. You're basically trying to get as many hexagons as possible. Click a direction, or hold down the left click, and guide your circle in the direction you want to go. In order to take over land, you have to encompass it and make sure your circle ends on land that you own. If anyone hits your tail while you're out, including yourself, you die. There are also green dots scattered throughout the map, which temporarily increase how fast you're going. It's a great combination of skill, risk assessment, and strategy. Personally, I like to build up my area slowly and just focus on those who are trying to kill me. This is a game where I would love to see a lobby system for, so I can just challenge my friends directly. There's also another game called Paper.io, which is pretty much the same thing, but it's a lot faster. There are also a lot of different game types and a lobby system. I overall like the presentation of Paper.io more, but depending on what kind of pace you want to play the game at, there are options out there. Hole.io. A really fun game where you start off every round as a hole in the ground. You start off consuming things, and after reaching certain marks, you gain a level and get slightly bigger. This allows you to swallow slightly bigger things until you're large enough that you begin to consume everything in sight. You can also totally encompass another hole in the ground and get points for that. There are two game modes, Classic, where you race to see who can become the bigger hole in 2 minutes, and Battle Royale, where you must destroy all the other holes in the game. I'm 99% sure that most of the people I've encountered in this game are actually bots. They seem way too incompetent to actually be people, and games fill up instantly, despite there only being 2 game types and 8 different maps, one of which literally came out as I was writing this video. Oftentimes you'll just encounter opponents with the names of random places or just 2 random words stuck together. Also, if you close the tab and come back, the timer pauses. So yeah, probably not real people. And now I'm questioning if the fidget spinner game had real people too. This game is extremely easy, but for some reason I find myself completely addicted to it. It's basically my favorite flavor of r/oddly satisfying. The physics are fun, the graphics look good, swallowing up more and more items as you grow bigger and bigger. It's so easy, and yet I can't stop playing. Besides the AI making it extremely easy to win, which I can say because I've literally only lost a game once, the biggest thing I feel like this game is missing is some sort of speed boost. When killing other circles, you have to encompass them entirely, but they also get pushed by you, so essentially you have to force them all the way into a corner, awkwardly line yourself up with the right spot to get them. So sometimes it can take up to like 30 seconds just to get from one corner to another depending on what angle you happen to be at. If there's a circle right behind you chasing you and they're partially in your space, anything you swallow will also give them points. This can be really annoying when you're traveling at almost the exact same speed. No matter where you go, they will always be slightly ahead of you in points. I immediately thought of Agar.io, a speed boost but making yourself smaller in the process. Maybe that would make the games too similar for some, but I feel like they're different enough that it would work. I would actually love to play this game with a group of competent people and not just AI. I feel like it would be really fun. The 2 minutes are perfect to just pick up and play, but we've talked about this one long enough. Truthfully, I don't even know if this counts as a .io game because the website is whole-io.com, but I'm completely addicted, so I had to throw it in here. Zomzio. Zoms.io. Zomzio. They could have been going for Zomzio on this one. An entire horror survival game built into the concept of protecting your stash of gold. Collect resources, build a fort, set up towers, and survive as many waves as possible. I'm not really sure how this one is multiplayer. You can technically create a party and play with other people, but it doesn't really change the game at all. You can place towers that get you resources, gold generators, a long list of towers that help defend your gold pit. You can keep upgrading the tiers of all your weapons and walls, but it would be a lot nicer is if you got to higher waves, you could place more. You start off with a certain limit of every block, and as far as I know, the number you can place never changes, meaning you eventually get stuck and can't really add to what you have. Essentially, the first thing you build is just trying to last as long as you can. It's really cool seeing other people's setups, but you can tell the game has been pretty metagame to the extreme. I've seen some games where people are on wave 530 and are clearly just idling in game while their defenses remain unstoppable. That being said, it would be a pretty fun challenge to maybe get some friends and see who can survive the longest, although the late game is insanely tedious and a very, very long grind. Full points for ambition. However, I know there's probably a few things I'm missing on this one, but this one is actually really in-depth and the type of game that people would probably pay money for on Steam. Krunker. I'm calling it Krunker because at the top tab bar, it just says Krunker, which is kind of funny. This game is an incredible example of just what these games have the potential of being. It's a complete and full first-person shooter game all within a web browser. Now, I'm not a first-person shooter guy, I have motion sickness, and games like these I can't really play for more than 5 minutes. But this one actually feels really good. There are tons of different loadouts that give your character different feels, there are different maps and mods and microtransactions and skins, and you can buy weapons and sell better weapons, and I'm pretty sure there's also a decent Twitch and YouTube following as well. Like I said, I don't really follow first-person shooters too closely, although I know games like CSGO have a lot of these features. But I'm pretty impressed that you can just type a game like this in your browser and start playing for free that second. Just looking around, there's so much to do, and it's a bit confusing at first, but I'm sure once you learn how to navigate around and learn the game types, there's plenty to do. Now, I don't want this video to just be me listing off every single game, because there's literally thousands, but I really want to show you the variety of styles these games come in. Let's do a rapid fire listing. Wings.io, fly around in a plane and collect power-ups to help you shoot down other planes. Bonus points for destroying the warships at the bottom. Powerline.io, it's like Slither.io, but you can only move in 4 directions, and there's more emphasis on killing the top leader. Tetra.io, it's Tetris. Warbot.io, a robot shooting game that's actually extremely impressive, although controls really weirdly. I don't know if I'm actually playing against other humans or bots, no joke intended there, but there's no lack of things to shoot when you start a game for sure. Stabfish.io, it's like watching videos of Roombas fighting with knives taped to the top, except you're the Roomba. Minigiants.io, this one actually isn't too bad, you get into little mini fights and level up. There's also items and an experience system, so you can keep coming back, and in theory it'll get easier to get good. Goosegame.io. Yep, I'm just walking around, I'm a goose, and oh god. That was violent. The .io games are such an anomaly to me. They seemingly came out of absolutely nowhere, they're not all made by the same person or group, half the time you can't even find information on who made the game, and yet they all seem to follow such a similar formula. They're great for playing for 5 minutes or for 5 hours depending on your mood. Some have complicated systems that encourage you to come back and get better, and some literally never deviate from the same standard gameplay. I really enjoy the multiplayer aspect as well, although I'm aware that there's a lot of these games where you're just playing against bots. Tons of them have lobbies so you can make sure you can play with your friends, and when you're playing with friends, even the simplest of objectives can be fun. As someone who doesn't own a Nintendo Switch but fell in love with the idea of Tetris 99, now you can play Tetra.io, which is browser Tetris. You can create lobbies or join other large group games. You may not get to 99 people, but you can still play with your friends, and it's a heck of a lot cheaper than buying a whole console. I think a big part of the reason that we don't see these games in the mainstream anymore is because for a lot of them, you can't really win. I'm all for games where you get a high score, and then the next time you try and beat that high score. I'm a huge fan of speedrunning, and that's basically what speedrunning is. But a lot of these games would really benefit from a system of one winner at the end. Having a battle royale for a game like Zoms.io, where you have specific people to outlast, or Hexar.io, where you have a certain time limit, and you have to have the most spaces by the end. A lot of people form their opinions on games at the moment they stop playing, and when you playing ends in you shrugging and not feeling resolution, it can be hard for people to want to come back for more of that. Doing a deeper dive into .io games, it really felt like I was looking at the second coming of Flash games. There's so much potential packed into these little simple experiences where you can get the hang of it in a few minutes and then waste a few hours. If I was a kid growing up right now in this generation, these are probably the first games I would ever play on the internet. And with Flash games dying out soon, perhaps we'll see a resurgence in these games and more people getting into them. We've well surpassed the heightened popularity of these games, and it seems younger gamers tend to jump into more complicated games right away for their first experience, such as Fall Guys or Fortnite, or the ever-growing mobile game market. While the most popular games such as Agar.io and Krunker.io will still have active player bases, many more are not as fortunate. Will we ever see another .io game blow up again, or do we have the titans that will stand the test of time and everything else will just be there? Whatever the answer may be, I hope these games stick around for a long time, and I truly hope the best of them aren't behind us, although I feel like they might be. These games already bring us something that, as a kid, I never would have thought anything like this would be possible. There's a line out there that these games pushed. Let's hope it gets pushed again, a little bit further, soon. Hello everybody, my name is Ghostboy259. Thank you so much for watching that video all the way through. I greatly appreciate it. I want to give a huge shout out to all of my Patreon supporters. I greatly appreciate all of you guys sticking around for as long as you have. The fact that I haven't been very consistent kind of bothers me, but thank you very much. I promise 2021 will be better. I will be uploading every single month, And I'm also going to be hitting that Twitch life as well. So if you're interested in watching me live on Twitch, you can come. We're very chill. You can hang out, ask questions. Twitch.tv/Ghostboy259. Link is in the description. I try to stream Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday evenings, Pacific Standard Time. I also have a highlights channel, Reality Escape Plays, so if you don't want to watch the full streams or you can't make it or you want to see what it's about, I have some highlights down there on YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter, of course. All of those beautiful social media links are down in the description below. Thank you everyone for your support, for your comments on the last video. I'm very happy to be back. 2021, we are going to absolutely kill it at this YouTube thing. I feel more confident now than ever before. There's some big things planned. I think you guys are really going to dig it, so thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for your patience. And yeah, I won't say too much, but I'll see you again very soon.